Welcome to Bonnie's Beat. I'm your host, Bonnie Squires, and we're coming to you from beautiful downtown Wayne, Radnor Studio 21. We like to inform you about what your neighbors are doing in the ways of charitable activities, educational activities, important things that you should learn about. And we're very lucky today to have with us a law professor emeritus from Villanova University, Professor Louis Becker, who has taken on a tremendous task at a local synagogue at Har Zion Temple. He and his wife Marilyn are co-chairing the 75th anniversary commemoration of Kristallnacht. Hey Lou, thanks for dropping by.
Thank you very much for having me, Bonnie. I'm honored to be here.
Especially since you were teaching earlier today, right?
My class ended at 2:25, yes.
So you got here just in time. Anyway, I want to show people this fabulous poster that someone created. What's
John
the name?
Hodis.
John Hodis, who's a member of Har Zion, who's a mainliner, created this wonderful, wonderful poster for Kristallnacht. And tell us what Kristallnacht, I mean, I studied for 10 years at Har Zion with the late, great Dr. William Glicksman, who was a survivor of Warsaw and Auschwitz. But tell us what Kristallnacht represents.
Well, Kristallnacht occurred on November 9th and 10th, 1938. It is regarded as a turning point in the Nazi treatment of Jews. Before Kristallnacht, the Nazi treatment of Jews was discrimination, it was social, it was political, it was legal. After Kristallnacht, it turned to murder, incarceration, beatings, and so it was...
And trainloads heading to the crematoria.
And trainloads heading to the crematoria, the ultimate final solution, so-called. So it's very, very significant. Over 270 synagogues in Berlin, I think, were destroyed or damaged severely. The term itself is broken glass, the night of broken glass, referring to the damage to the windows of and structures of synagogues and Jewish-owned businesses. Jewish men were rounded up and sent off to concentration camps. Interestingly enough, I think the number that I've seen is 30,000 Jewish young men who were sent off to concentration camps. Ultimately, they were released because the Nazis at that point had not come up with the idea of the final solution. 2,000 had died in the interim in the camps.
They needed them alive for slave labor.
Well, there's a member of our congregation who's a member of the committee who's helping to put on this program, whose dad was imprisoned sent to a concentration camp during Kristallnacht, and his mother got his dad out by going to the Panamanian consul and obtaining a visa. And the visa was good for 1 day only, and it was granted on the express condition that they would never come to Panama. But it was just designed to get them out of Germany, and that's what they did. So later, at some point, it was the beginning of the final solution, because at some point, shortly after Kristallnacht, as I understand it, the Nazis began to talk about the need for a final solution, whereas before the concern was on expulsion of Jews and driving the Jews who were in Germany out. And then it became, let's round them up and kill them. But so Kristallnacht is a turning point, and part of the commemoration of it in terms of contemporaneous importance is that it represents a point where the government, at that time the Nazi government, became aware that it could not be stopped because there was no outcry within Germany against this treatment. And some of us believe that this echoes today's situation, in that it's important not to permit government repression of this severity and magnitude to reach that kind of critical point again where people are just killed and murdered.
Well, we've seen examples. Uganda is not a pleasant place to be these days. You know,
Right.
there are a number of places in Africa where, and the Tutus and the Hutsis, which was a few years ago, but it really is genocide.
Well, that's right, and that kind of is the real significance of the present day significance of Kristallnacht in terms of contemporaneous application. So this commemoration that the Har Zion Temple is having is not simply about remembering the past, if you will, but also reflecting on present day meaning. And I'll say here, one of the things I think of is the famous quote from William Faulkner, who said in one of his novels, said, the past is never dead. In fact, it's not even past.
Very interesting.
And I think that really is
very interesting,
applicable here.
And we're fortunate that we still have Elie Wiesel with us,
yes,
to remind us. And I mean, it's when you think this is the 75th anniversary, and it's wonderful and miraculous that there are survivors still around to tell us what Kristallnacht was like.
Well,
and we have to give credit to Steven Spielberg for his show, the brilliant vision he had in collecting videotapes of the survivors, because he saw that soon that generation would be gone, and then the Holocaust deniers would be free to make up preposterous stories, which they've been making up for years now.
Well, part of this program at Har Zion, let me just mention this, part of the program at Har Zion will include a recognition of people in the audience who are survivors of the Holocaust, and specifically of Kristallnacht. And then also kind of counterbalancing that in a sense is we'll have expect to have speaking a representative of Action Reconciliation Service for Peace, which is a organization which enlists German youth volunteers worldwide to work with some of them work with the Jewish community, some work with marginalized communities, and we expect to have a speaker who won't speak for very long, but a speaker who will talk about just her work with Jewish community and perhaps what brought her there. And then there will be an opportunity after the program to meet with these people and talk with them. But
the centerpiece of the Kristallnacht, it's called Stars in the Dust, and the centerpiece is a cantata for chamber orchestra, chorus, soloist, and narrator by Samuel Adler. Now, it turns out this is a community-wide commemoration. This is not something that's just for the membership of a particular synagogue, and it's not just for people who are Jewish either.
We have invited clergy of various denominations to attend. We hope to have a procession of clergy opening up the program, carrying lighted candles to...
You know who would be great? I hope Father Gillespie, the new president of St. Joe's, is included, because he's just a terrific person.
Well, we have
very ecumenical.
We have extended invitations to people. My understanding is that Archbishop Chaput had said that he intends to send a representative. He cannot be there. He will not be in Philadelphia, but he intends to send a representative.
Well, that's good.
So it will be broadly based. We've invited various members of the community to attend, and that's why I'm here. As a matter of fact, of course, is just to invite your listeners and viewers to attend.
The cantor of Har Zion Temple is Elliot Vogel, who has an extraordinary voice, but it's a lot more than a voice, because he's got a sensitivity and a consciousness and a sense of history. But it turns out that Lou Becker told me that Cantor Wall, that was
the prior predecessor,
who's still going strong in Atlantic City, fortunately. But that Cantor Vogel performed this cantata and was one of a group of cantors that commissioned the writing of this cantata 25 years ago on the 50th anniversary of Kristallnacht.
Yes.
And it was his idea to say, we need to do it again. We need to teach people. We need to expose them. And Larry Kane graciously agreed to be the moderator.
Narrator. Let me explain a little bit about this. The cantata is serious music. This is a piece of music that is serious music. So we will have, it's probably about 45 minutes or so in length. It will be performed by Larry Kane will be the narrator. Because there's an important role for the narrator, and we're honored to have such a distinguished person from the Philadelphia community and the media community who's well known and respected by everybody. We're very fortunate to have him volunteer to do this. And he will have a speaking role throughout the cantata. There will be a choir, which will have a singing role. There will be soloists, so Cantor Vogel will be a soloist, a baritone soloist is Elizabeth Weigel, who's a wonderful, wonderful soprano, will also be a soloist. And I hope I'm not omitting anyone. I do hope so. But but this is a piece of serious music. We will also have and then again, as I say, we'll also have a few speakers. The composer Samuel Adler, who is 83 years old and a professor emeritus at Eastman College of Music, and still I believe
That's a biggie.
And still I believe a professor at Juilliard will speak. And
he has nice credentials. In
yes,
other
he
words.
does. He will speak for about 10 minutes, and so this will be serious music. And then, as I say, there also will be. There's posters that the Anti-Defamation League and the Holocaust Awareness Museum and Education Center and the Conference of Holocaust Educators of Philadelphia have prepared about 15 posters, educational posters on various aspects of Kristallnacht and of the German treatment of Jews in the late 30s. So, and there's a video, we'll have a DVD running, an automatic of survivors. So this is a big time program. There's, as I said to you before we went on camera, there's a lot of moving parts involved.
And it draws upon the experience of the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, with their No Place for Hate, and their wiping out or attempting to wipe out bigotry, racism, anti-Semitism, you name the ism, the ADL is involved with that. The U.S. Memorial Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C., and there were some Delaware Valley folks that were involved with the, Miles Lehrman of blessed memory was one of the founders, or perhaps the founder, along with Elie Wiesel. And there are a number of organizations, and ADL also does an amazing program for Catholic school teachers.
I know that.
They have a seminar, like a week long each summer, where they teach the Catholic school teachers how to incorporate the study of the Holocaust period of history into their curriculum. Now, Lou is a law professor, so let's turn to what Nazi Germany did to civil rights and laws, and how they were able to pervert an entire country and change all the laws of human behavior.
Well, that's actually a different aspect, and I know it's been said that if you looked at some of the laws prior to the specific discrimination against Jews on the books in Germany, that they were perfect, but of course it was all about application. But then, of course, after that, specific laws were passed to discriminate against Jews, to prohibit Jews from owning businesses, to hold work in public service, to do all kinds of things. And one of the posters that I mentioned has a specific provision from the so-called Nuremberg laws defining who is a Jew, because if the idea was that that Jews were to be essentially non-people, and non-people who were to have very severe burdens, This is before, of course, everybody was rounded up, which was totally different. But even at that point, who was a Jew? And they had to define, well, what happens if a Jew marries a non-Jew? And you carry that down further and into the various generations. It was very much of a sort of blood-based legal system. Pretty horrible. And then, of course, as I say, ultimately, it turned from being social discrimination, political discrimination, to economic discrimination, to outright genocide. And as I say, Kristallnacht was viewed as the turning point for that. Let me mention also, by the way, we're very proud of this program. But I should mention, and I know we have up Bonnie has graciously put up the telephone contact number if you're interested in attending. But let me mention there is a charge. The charge is $10 for general admission and $25 for seating in the reserved section. So they're not reserved seats as such in the sense of specific seat number,
Right.
but rather there's a reserved section. So in my capacity as talking about the event, I thought I needed to clarify that, so you'll pardon me.
Let's make sure people have the phone number. It's 610-667-5000, 610-667-5000. And if you call the office and say you're interested in purchasing a ticket for the Kristallnacht commemoration, excuse me, which is also called Stars in the Dust. I love that.
But that's the name of the
cantata.
that's the name of the cantata.
Stars in the Dust. That is just wonderful. And this is, as I said, this is community-wide, and I'm looking forward to meeting the German student who's here from the Action and Reconciliation Service for Peace organization. And that's really remarkable to me, that young people who were born long after Kristallnacht, long after World War II was over, they've studied, they've learned, and they want to make repairs.
Well, what we expect to have is 4 of the volunteers who are working in the vicinity, the Philadelphia vicinity. Some of them do not work in the Jewish community. As I say, they work with other marginalized groups, but some of them do, and some of them do work with the Jewish community. And so Hannah Weyer is the name of the young lady who does work with the Jewish community, and we certainly hope that she will be able to speak briefly just about, and then be available afterwards to talk. And we haven't programmed in a specific discussion, planned discussion structure after the program is over, but we hope that we will have people from Action Reconciliation at a table, perhaps a representative of the Anti-Defamation League or some of the other sponsoring organizations at the table, because this is a effort, as I said, not only there's been a lot of cooperation, and I do have to mention the names because they were just so helpful, not only the Anti-Defamation League, but as I said, the Holocaust Awareness Museum and Education Center and the Conference of Holocaust Educators of Greater Philadelphia. All did a great deal of work in doing the background, planning these exhibits, which really, the posters are part text and part photo. So that one, for example, which I consider just very striking, just one poster, half of it is an illustration from a German children's book showing children, this is in bright colors, and it's an illustration showing children looking at a poster board kind of explaining why Jews are the enemy, and two...
This is in a children's book.
This is in a children's book, and 2 caricatures of Jews are standing nearby. And again, so that's one side of the poster. The other side of that same poster is German soldiers and civilians looking at a bulletin board which depicts the Jews as enemy. So it's one is illustration and one is practice, if you will. And then there's another poster just about Jewish children and how they were mistreated in class, actually. Just
in your family law courses at Villanova Law School, do you ever reference what happens to a society when the laws are perverted or twisted for an insidious purpose?
Not really, because we don't really get into that. I mean, I do, the course is a traditional course, and there's enough, I was going to say controversial topics, but same-sex marriage, for example, at one time was extraordinarily controversial, and it still is,
but that's
as far as some people are concerned. But certainly
that's part of the curriculum.
That's part of my course. Yeah, that's a big part.
Oh, that's wonderful.
That's a big part. Yeah.
Okay.
And
Now, how was your consciousness raised about Nazism, about the Holocaust, about what happened to the European Jewish community during World War II?
Well, I think that it's really, with me, it's simply, having had this experience and being involved in the preparation of the posters and the selection of images for the posters, and the general discussion, and the discussion with some of the people who are survivors, has made me even more aware of the importance of dealing with, of not permitting this type of governmental misconduct to occur. And that means that there's an obligation, I think, on the part of citizens when they see something like this, and I think whether here or abroad, to raise their voices and try to get government to take action and to say this is unacceptable. And I think that's an important lesson that I've learned from this experience.
My exposure goes back a very long time. When I was an undergraduate at Penn, I decided to go to Hillel every Wednesday for a few years to try to learn Yiddish. I wanted to know what my grandparents were speaking. I wanted to know about the literature and so on. And the classes were taught by the late Dr. William Glicksman, this saintly man, this brilliant educator who had survived the Warsaw Ghetto, who had survived Auschwitz when they took him out and were torturing him. When he came back to his barracks at Auschwitz, he was the only one alive. They had gassed everybody else.
That's amazing.
And he lost his first family there. But when he was liberated, he came to America, and he was an author, social scientist, had another family. You know, his son is prominent in the community now, Alan Glicksman, Dr. Alan Glicksman, PhD doctor. And then Har Zion engaged Dr. Glicksman for 10 years. He taught really college-level courses on the history of the Holocaust. And it was very much in a scientific vein, like how the Warsaw Ghetto was organized, what the structure was, what the roles of the capos were. They were Jews who were enlisted to be like police underneath the Nazis. And it took many years for Dr. Glicksman to tell us his personal stories. But I'll never forget one day where he said, you know, if you're standing at the Radnor train station or the Ardmore train station, and you're on the train and you're on your way to work, and you see a group of bedraggled people who aren't dressed for the snow, who may not even have shoes on their feet, who are skinny and look starving, and they're being shepherded by soldiers with rifles, and you look away, don't say that they didn't know what was being done.
Right,
you know, there are an awful lot of Germans who say, well, we didn't know what was happening. And when their neighbors were dragged out of their beds in the middle of the night, and a German officer came and moved in to their apartment and took all their paintings or whatever, they knew, but they didn't want to know. It was like a virus had infected the whole German psyche.
Well, yeah, I don't know about that time. That's certainly some of my understanding. I know that when Cantor Vogel went to Germany with a group of people, that he was very, very impressed with what had been done to try to, I won't say make amends, but to try to reconcile the Germans, to reconcile, well, to establish reconciliation, meaning that the Germans were aware of the problem, aware of their history.
And they teach it now,
Yeah, and they
which is very interesting and important.
And so that they're aware of that, and they've tried to deal with that in a frank, forthright manner, and to some extent, the Action Reconciliation Service for Peace represents the response of German youth.
I had a friend years ago who was with the German delegation to the United Nations. I was involved with the president of a UN reform group. And when I would go to his office at the UN in New York, and he was wonderful, Michael, I can't remember his last name, but he was very ecumenical. But I would always make sure that I would bring a plastic bag that I had gotten in Israel that had Hebrew writing on it. It was sort of like, like, okay, holding off the, the vampires or whatever. And he was just lovely and wonderful and really a humanitarian. But it's difficult to deal with. I'm reading Delia Ephron's new memoir right now about the loss of her sister and a lot of funny things and her life story. And even though she was not religious, wasn't raised religious at all, she could never bring herself to buy German or to go to Germany.
Well, I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of people who have those feelings, and I understand them, and the Germans are aware of that. And
I bet they are.
I guess what you can say though is that the present, hopefully, as far as most of the people in power are concerned, and most of the populace are concerned, hopefully they are aware of what happened. They recognize the responsibility for what occurred, and they want to reconcile and do what they can to make amends. And I hopefully that is true. And that doesn't, obviously, there are rightist groups that are
there are haters in every society.
That are dangerous.
Yeah.
My wife and I went with Cantor Vogel and some people to a Cantor's Assembly in Poland. And again, there's that whole history of bad things happening to Jews in Poland. But at the same time, we went to a concert in the main concert hall in Warsaw. The Polish children's choir sang Hatikva.
Really?
Yes. It was very...
well, that's an important gesture.
And there were people who were, again, the same thing, concerned, wanted to do what they could to reestablish a cordial relationship. But again, at the same time, I'm sure there are people there who are haters, as you say.
Well, let me hold up the poster again, because it is a gorgeous poster. And the Kristallnacht commemoration, Stars in the Dust, the cantata by Samuel Adler, starring Cantor Elliott Vogel, cast of thousands.
And Larry Kane. And
Larry Kane, cast of thousands. The Consular Corps should be invited also.
They have been.
Wonderful.
And at least, yeah.
Sunday night, wait, let me get the plug.
Oh, excuse me.
Sunday night, November 10th, 7 p.m. It will be at Har Zion Temple, but it's for the world. It's not just for the Jewish community. It's not just for the synagogue. So our guest today has been Professor Emeritus Louis Becker, who teaches at Villanova Law School, teaches family law, and he and his wife Marilyn have become the chairs of this very important community commemoration. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Bonnie. I've enjoyed our conversation.
Okay, and we'll see everybody on November 10th.